Ashley's mother came to pick us up before Seth could make any further moves, so I was spared having to reject him definitely and make future sailing meetings awkward. At the lunchtime meeting the next day, he sat next to me but would not meet my eye. His face retained traces of pirate makeup, principally eyeliner, which I found obscurely embarrassing. When the fourth period bell rang, I left quickly to avoid any possibility of conversation. He got up as if to follow, but evidently changed his mind when he saw Ashley waiting for me outside Miss Nettleton's room. "You've got to see this!" she cried, grabbing my elbow and pulling me downstairs to the announcement board, which the Gerard twins were inspecting in postures of excitement, Yolanda, I assumed, and mild interest, Yvette. "Look!" commanded Ashley with a sweeping gesture. "What?" I asked. The twins' beaded heads blocked my view. "Auditions!" answered Ashley joyfully. "Auditions? Why would Ash care about auditions?" "At Fourfield for their musical," she elaborated. "Fourfield, get it?" said Yolanda. "The boys' school, that means not a lot of people auditioning for girls' parts. Holy crisp, no Cordelia Nixon or Michelle Jeffries, 'cause they're in West Side Story, and who else from here is gonna bother? I bet if we just show up we can get parts, and if you can carry a tune, you can be a star. How about it, you want to be the heroine?" she asked her sister. Yvette shook her head. "You can be the heroine. I'm playing the most important part," she said. "What part's that?" said Yolanda. "They're not going to let you be the hero, silly. They have plenty of boys. And it says here, directed by Benjamin Seward." "No, silly. The audience." I thought Yvette had the right idea. Acting in a play, a musical no less, was a frightening thought for someone as shy as me, not to mention the danger of a painful meeting with Parr. How much easier it would be if Ash would only let me to stay home and brood. But that, I told myself, I must not do. No, seeing Parr and Ash together might be good for me, like cauterizing a wound to make it stop bleeding. In fact, I found myself almost hoping that I would see Parr. Surely, a tempting little voice whispered, it would help me get over my troubles. The next problem Ash and I faced was finding suitable monologues for our auditions. Ash naturally first thought of Darcy's proposal in Pride and Prejudice, the speech that begins, "In vain have I struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." Unfortunately, as we found when we consulted the book, that's also where the speech ends. Jane Austen tells us that the avowal of all that he felt and had long felt for her immediately followed, but she doesn't specify what he says. The rest of the scene takes the form of a dialogue between the proud hero and offended heroine, deeply interesting to readers, but useless to auditioners. We considered and rejected various alternatives, such as Mr. Collins' letter announcing his visit to the Bennet family, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh's howl of disapproval at the thought that Elizabeth might become her niece by marrying Darcy. They were all either too brief or too deeply embedded in the novel's plot to stand alone. "The problem is, it's a novel," I argued. "Don't you think we'd have better luck finding monologues if we looked at plays instead of books? Or movies, even?" "No drama could be more dramatic than the works of the great Miss Austen," said Ashley dismissively. "Let's at least go down to the video store and see if we get any ideas," I urged. She shot me the mad gleam. "My dear Julia, I believe you may have hit upon the solution. Perhaps some playwright or screenwriter may have supplied Miss Austen's missing words." We rented 3 different Pride and Prejudices. After some discussion and much poking at the rewind button, Ash picked the Colin Firth version of Darcy's proposal and scribbled out a transcription. For my audition piece, I chose Mercutio's Queen Mab speech in Romeo and Juliet. It's part of a scene in which Mercutio, my favorite character, mercilessly teases his cousin Romeo about being in love. He attributes Romeo's mooniness to a visit from Queen Mab, the fairy responsible for dreams. I chose it because I knew it practically by heart, having written a paper about it for the Nettle. Still, I tended to agree with Yolanda that the play was at least as silly as it was beautiful. The whole tragedy was so unnecessary. If Romeo and Juliet had just talked to each other, nobody would have had to die. Besides being easy for me to memorize, the speech also had the advantage of being by Shakespeare, and therefore tough for a modern girl to deliver and even tougher for a modern listener to follow. Although I refused to let myself flub the audition on purpose, I secretly hoped that the difficulty of the material would keep me from getting a part. Then I'd be spared the pain of watching my best friend's budding relationship with my lost love. Mrs. Gerard drove Yolanda, Ashley, and me to Fourfield for our auditions. As the car wound up the drive toward the school on the hill, I felt my insides quadrilling in a way that couldn't be explained by mere motion sickness. "Break a leg, girls," said Mrs. Gerard, dropping us in front of the R. McNichol Robbins Theater Arts Center, behind the main classroom building. We pulled open the heavy bronze doors and followed signs into the theater, where a group of people clustered near the stage. A spotlight reflected brightly off the hair of a slim, tallish figure, transforming my inner quadrille into a gymnastics meet. When he stepped aside, however, I saw that he was not the person I half hoped, half dreaded to see, but a brown-haired boy about the same height. "Ashley! Julie!" called a male voice from the other side of the room. It set the trampolines going again briefly, until I recognized it a split second later as Ned's bass. He bounded up the aisle to meet us. "You made it! Come meet Benjo and Miss Wilson." Ashley introduced Yolanda, and we followed Ned down to the front of the theater. Aside from one pale creature in a Sacred Heart uniform, we three were the only girls. "Hey, it's Erin from Sacred Heart," said Yolanda, running up to greet her. Chris Stevens, the boy who had shared my planter at the Columbus Cotillion, lounged beside Erin. He winked at me. Boys of various sizes punched each other and squirmed, or sat apart reviewing their monologues. Some stared